It was just another cold, gray evening at Western Penitentiary in Pittsburgh. The guards made their usual rounds, keys jangling against their belts, their boots echoing down the stone corridors. The prisoners were locked in for the night, steel bars separating them from the outside world. Most had long accepted their fate, knowing they'd never see freedom again. But deep inside the prison, beyond the watchful eyes of the guards, a plan was forming. One so daring, so impossible, that if it failed, it would mean certain death. For one group of men, tonight wasn't just another night behind bars. Tonight was the beginning of their escape. The prison had been built to be inescapable. Thick stone walls, armed guards, watchtowers that overlooked the entire facility. The place was designed to crush the spirit of anyone who dared dream of freedom. But no prison is perfect. Every wall has a weakness. Every lock has a flaw. And sometimes the right men come along, the kind who refuse to accept their fate, the kind willing to risk everything for one chance at freedom. Among them was a man who had been studying the prison for months, watching, learning. He wasn't the strongest prisoner, he wasn't the fastest, but he had something else: patience. And he had noticed something the guards hadn't. A small gap in the routine. At first, it seemed like nothing, just a small mistake, a minor oversight in the way the guards moved, but over time, the mistake repeated itself. And that was when he realized it wasn't just a mistake, it was an opportunity. The others didn't believe him at first. They had seen men try to escape before. Some had dug tunnels, only to be caught inches from freedom. Others had tried to bribe the guards, only to be betrayed. Most were either recaptured or shot dead. But he wasn't planning on failing, because this wasn't just an escape attempt. This was a strategy. Step 1 was assembling the right team. He couldn't do this alone. He needed men who had skills, men he could trust. The first recruit was a man who had been a locksmith before his arrest. He knew how locks worked, how they could be picked, manipulated, or broken. The second was an ex-miner. He had spent years underground, carving through rock, working with his hands. He knew how to dig without making a sound. The third was a man who had escaped before. Not from this prison, but from others. He had seen what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, he understood how guards thought. Together, they were the foundation of the escape. The plan had to be perfect. The margin for error? 0. The weak spot was a hidden passageway behind one of the cells. Most prisoners ignored it, thinking it led nowhere. Just an old maintenance tunnel, abandoned years ago. But they had discovered something. It wasn't sealed off completely, and if they could find a way inside, they could use it. But there was a problem. The tunnel entrance was guarded by an iron grate, bolted to the stone wall. They couldn't just rip it off. The noise would alert the guards instantly. That's where the locksmith came in. Over the next several weeks, he worked in silence using scraps of metal smuggled from the prison yard. Every night after lights out, he'd pick at the bolts, one by one, loosening them millimeter by millimeter. It was agonizingly slow. One mistake, and the entire plan would be ruined. But after weeks of careful work, the grate moved. It was just a few inches, but that was all they needed. The tunnel was real, and it led somewhere. The next step was mapping the tunnel. Nobody knew exactly where it went. It could lead to another sealed chamber, or worse, it could lead them straight into the hands of the guards. That's where the ex-miner came in. Using nothing but a small piece of broken mirror, he crept inside the tunnel, crawling forward, inch by inch, feeling his way through the darkness. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. The air was stale, thick with dust and decay. Every few feet he stopped, listening. If there was any sign of movement ahead, they'd have to abandon the plan. But after several nights of exploring, he found something. At the far end of the tunnel, there was a second grate, and beyond it, a storeroom. A unguarded storeroom, and from there, a door leading to the outside. It was real. They had found their way out. But getting there was only half the battle. The real challenge was time. They couldn't just walk out in the middle of the day. They needed a window, a moment when the prison was at its weakest, and that moment came every third Tuesday of the month. On that night, the prison conducted a routine fire drill. The guards left their posts. Ekshiki focused on moving prisoners' crew rather than watching exits. For 15 minutes, the prison was vulnerable. 15 minutes. That was all they had, and so they waited. Every night they practiced, moving in silence, timing each step, memorizing every turn in the tunnel, and when the night came, they moved. The locksmith was first. He pried the grate open, holding it steady so it wouldn't slam against the stone. One by one, they slipped inside. The miner led the way through the tunnel. The darkness was suffocating, but they didn't stop. They reached the second grate. The locksmith worked quickly, hands steady despite the tension. It gave way. They slipped into the storeroom. They had minutes left. Before the guards returned to their posts, the door to the outside world was just ahead. But there was one last obstacle, a single guard, stationed near the back entrance. If he saw them, it was over. They had seconds to act. The escapee, who had done this before, knew what to do. He grabbed a piece of old fabric from the storeroom, wrapped it around his hands, and lunged. A silent takedown. The guard hit the ground. They didn't stop to check if he was unconscious or just dazed. They ran, and then you're outside. The cold air hit them like a slap, but they didn't stop. The key vanished into the night, splitting up, heading in different directions. By the time the guards noticed something was wrong, they were already gone. The prison went into lockdown. Sirens blared. Search teams were dispatched. For 2 weeks, authorities hunted them down. Some were caught, some weren't. But one thing was certain: they had beaten the system. And for those who made it, they disappeared, slipping into history as ghosts of Western Penitentiary. Men who had done the impossible, men who had refused to accept their fate, because no prison, no matter how strong, could hold a man who was willing to risk everything for freedom.